Sagittarius. This message will amaze you, but it was fated to reach you. Sagittarius, this isn't just another video. It's a message, a quiet knock on your heart, a whisper carried across space and time that says, you were meant to hear this now. Not because everything is perfect, but because something in you has been silently calling for alignment, longing for a deeper truth, a sacred answer, a reminder of who you are beyond the labels, roles, and expectations. This message may shake something inside you, not from fear but from recognition, the kind that stirs when the soul is finally spoken to, the kind that feels like a memory awakening, like coming home to yourself after a long wandering journey. If your chest tightens, if your eyes well up, if your breath deepens for no reason at all, it's not random. That is your soul saying, I remember. Because this is not a prediction, it is a remembering. And over the next few minutes, you will walk through stories of loss, rediscovery, spiritual calling, and quiet revolutions. Each one real. Each one destined to land in the heart of someone like you. So take a breath, Sagittarius. Let your defenses rest. You don't need to prove anything here. You are not too late, too broken, or too much. You are simply ready. And if this message touches something deep within, help it find another Sagittarius searching in the dark. Like this video, share it if it speaks to you, and subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom to walk beside us on this soul-led journey. Now let us step into Gate 1, where what breaks you doesn't end you but begins the blooming. Gate 1. When everything breaks, the soul begins to bloom. Sagittarius, you are known for your fire, your freedom, your hunger for life. But even a wild spirit like yours has known what it feels like to break. This isn't the kind of breaking others can see. It's quiet. It happens in the places no one thinks to look. In the stillness after a dream ends. In the silence that follows a goodbye that never came. You once believed in something so strongly. A love, a path, a purpose, that you gave your whole heart to it. Not because you were naive, but because you were brave. Brave enough to believe that something real could grow from vulnerability. Brave enough to love without armor. And when it crumbled, it wasn't just sadness you felt. It was disorientation, like the compass inside you had been magnetized by a false north. You kept showing up, smiling, working, but inside something had gone dim, like the stars had vanished from your internal sky. One Sagittarius woman around 42 had built her life around a stable teaching job, a marriage, and 2 kids. For a while it worked, until it didn't. Her partner walked away with only 3 words. I'm not happy. No explanation. No discussion. Just a void. She tried to stay strong for her children, but every night she sat on the bathroom floor whispering, I don't know who I am without this life. But that's the strange gift of breaking, Sagittarius. It doesn't erase you. It reveals you. At her lowest, she remembered something from her 20s. Writing poetry by candlelight, barefoot in the grass, before life became a checklist. One night, on a whim, she opened a blank notebook. And the first line that spilled out was not, I am broken. It was, I am still here. That sentence became her anchor. And from that place of collapse, a new path began to rise. Not fast, not perfect, but true. Another Sagittarius, a young man who had once dreamed of working in music production, had been pulled into the corporate machine after college. Promotions, suits, KPIs. His soul shrank with every spreadsheet. But he stayed, afraid of disappointing his parents. Until one night he stood in the studio of an old friend, just watching him mix a track. And something ancient inside him stirred. He walked away, not to escape but to remember. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he couldn't stay where his light was dying. The truth is, Sagittarius, you're not afraid of change. You're afraid of wasting your fire on something that doesn't feed your soul. And when that fear becomes unbearable, you don't collapse, you choose. You walk away not because you're weak, but because you're waking up. And sometimes the universe won't let you rest until you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. So if you felt like your life has been quietly falling apart, maybe it's not falling, it's clearing. Making space for the version of you that's been waiting in the shadows, whispering, there's more. And that whisper, it's not a lie. It's your truth returning. Let that be your fire again. Gate 2, the endings that set you free. Sagittarius, you've always been known as the wanderer, the seeker of meaning, the archer whose arrow points to truth. But even the strongest truth seekers face moments when life closes in. When the road ends without a map. When a chapter that felt sacred ends without mercy. And you ask yourself, was it all for nothing? Let me tell you something. For a soul like yours, nothing is ever wasted. Every step, even the painful ones, is part of your unfolding. There was once a Sagittarius man in his 30s, bold, witty, constantly in motion. On the outside he had it all. A high-paying job, a fast car, a fiancée who looked perfect on paper. But on the inside, he felt like a ghost inside his own story. On the morning of what should have been a joyful engagement photo shoot, he looked in the mirror and whispered, "This isn't me." And for once he didn't ignore it. He called it off. He gave the ring back. He walked away not because he wanted to hurt someone, but because he finally chose not to betray himself anymore. Broke him. He cried in private, ashamed, confused. But beneath those tears was a deeper peace. A sense that for the first time in years he wasn't lying to his soul. This is what many don't understand about Sagittarius endings. They look sudden, but they've been coming for a long time. There's another story. A Sagittarius woman, 57 years old, who had spent decades in a marriage that had grown cold. No abuse, no cruelty, just two people drifting like tectonic plates. She stayed for the kids, for appearances, for comfort. But inside, she felt like a bird with clipped wings. On her birthday, she received a handmade card from her granddaughter. It read, "Grandma, I love how your eyes sparkle when you tell stories about the stars." That night, she sat outside under the sky and whispered, "When did I stop telling stories?" The next morning, she packed a small bag and drove to the coast. Not to leave everything, but to remember something. Her husband didn't beg her to stay. And for the first time in decades, that silence didn't hurt. It freed her. Sagittarius, your endings are not punishments. They are callings. Invitations to return to the wild, sacred rhythm of your own heart. You don't end things lightly. You fight. You try. You believe. But when the fire is gone, you know. No truth is worth living if it doesn't set you free. You've learned that goodbye can be a holy word. You've learned that silence can be a prayer. And you've learned that freedom isn't always loud. It can come quietly, like a feather landing on your shoulder, reminding you, you were never meant to shrink just to stay. So if you're facing a decision, a closure, a goodbye, don't fear it. Don't resist it. Honor it. Because every Sagittarius knows, when one journey ends, it's only because another, deeper one is calling. And this time it leads to a part of yourself you've long forgotten, but never truly lost. Gate 3: Spiritual Love and Soul Connection. Sagittarius, you are ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, meaning, and divine truth. So it's no surprise that when it comes to love, you don't just want companionship. You crave connection. You yearn for something that doesn't just touch the skin but reaches the soul. You may have felt it before, briefly, mysteriously. A conversation that felt like coming home. A glance that cracked something open. A silence that said more than words ever could. And just as quickly, that connection might have vanished, leaving behind a question that lingers. Was that real? Or was it just my imagination? Let me reassure you, it was real. Because the Sagittarius heart is a compass, and it always points to soul truth, even when you try to ignore it. There's a man I once met, 38 years old, Sagittarius sun, who traveled alone across continents not just to escape, but to remember. He told me about a woman he met in Istanbul, only for 3 days. They barely spoke the same language. But one evening, as they sat overlooking the Bosphorus, she reached out and simply placed her hand over his. No words, no plans, just presence. And in that moment, he said, it was like I could hear her soul humming in a language older than time. He never saw her again. And yet, he carried that moment for years, not as regret, but as proof that soul connection is not about longevity. It's about depth. You see, Sagittarius, your love isn't meant to be caged. It's not built on routine. It's built on remembrance, a deep knowing that says, I know you, not from this life but from before. And for many Sagittarians, love arrives not as a perfect partner, but as a sacred mirror. It reveals the parts of you that still need healing, challenges your freedom, it tests your truth. And yet, when the love is real, it expands you. It never asks you to shrink. You may be in a phase now where love feels distant, Perhaps you've closed your heart after being misunderstood too many times. Perhaps you've labeled yourself too much, too restless, too complicated. But here's the truth. You were never too much. You were just not met fully. You were just ahead of your time, waiting for someone who doesn't want to own you, but to walk beside you. Someone whose soul doesn't want to fix you, but to witness you. Someone who doesn't try to change your fire, but learns how to dance with it. And yes, that kind of connection does exist. But it can only find you when you are willing to be seen as you are, wild, honest, unpolished, and glowing. There is a divine love frequency, one that calls in not just romance but recognition. A partner who sees your shadow and still reaches for your hand. A soul who says, I know the storms you've crossed to get here, and I'm not afraid of them. Whether you're single, in a relationship, or healing from one, you are never disconnected from love. Love is not a person. It is a frequency, a mirror, a vibration you carry. And when you tune into it, others will too. So tonight, Sagittarius, close your eyes and whisper not a wish, but a memory. I remember the love that made me feel whole. I remember what it felt like to be seen. And then allow the universe to bring it back to you. Not as a repeat, but as a reward for your growth. Not as a test, but as a gift for your truth. Because when your soul is ready, love doesn't have to knock twice. It enters freely. Conclusion, Sagittarius, your journey was never meant to be ordinary. On June 1, on June 6, on June 9, these are not just dates on a calendar. These are sacred checkpoints of your inner unfolding. You began this journey unsure, searching for signs in silence, holding griefs too heavy for words, carrying dreams others didn't see. But what if I told you every broken piece you once cursed is now the very mosaic lighting your way forward? Sagittarius, Gate 1 reminded you that endings are not punishment, they are portals. The collapse wasn't the end. It was the awakening. The moment your soul whispered, this isn't who I came to be. Gate 2 returned you to your calling. Not the job or the title, but the silent heartbeat of your purpose. Your hands began to move again. Your voice started to tremble with truth. You remembered what it felt like to be alive on your own terms. Gate 3 reintroduced you to a love that transcends logic. It told you that you don't need to be fixed, tamed, or softened. You are not too free, too wild, or too big, you are soul-sized. And there is a kind of love that is not afraid of that. Now, at the close of this sacred journey, I want you to know something with every fiber of your being. You were never meant for the ordinary path. The detours, the collapses, the long nights of loneliness, they were not delays. They were recalibrations. They were the universe reshaping you for something bigger, braver, and more aligned. So as June continues to unfold, do not shrink to fit back into an old chapter. Do not quiet your fire to comfort others. This is your moment to expand, Sagittarius. Step through the portal. Trust the path, even if it's unclear. Your soul has a compass older than time, and it's pointing forward. If this journey has touched you, type in the comments. I choose my truth. I choose my light. I choose my path. Like this video, share it with someone who may be standing at their own edge of transformation. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom, because this is just the beginning. There are more messages, more awakenings, more sacred chapters ahead. You are the explorer, the seeker, the flame carrier. And Sagittarius, the world is waiting for your next step. Let it be bold. Let it be real. Let it be you.